know that we are live and they can come and see Citizen Bitcoin. All right, that's it. We got the link here. Get shareable link. Going to Twitter, and you are tagged in the tweet, so you're out now. All right. Welcome everyone to another edition of the Toxic Happy Hour. Today with no other than Citizen Bitcoin, aka Brady. It's a pleasure to have you on. Welcome.
What's up, Anders? How you doing, man?
I'm good, thanks. And how's it going with you? First of all, what are you drinking today?
I have a Cosmic IPA. I thought this was appropriate because I thought maybe we could get a little Cosmic on this this episode here. Cosmic IPA called Space Camper. It's by Boulevard Brewing in Kansas City, a local brewery, but they're national. You can get Boulevard beer pretty much anywhere, I think, at this point. This is a good one, man. It's juicy. It's hoppy. I love it.
Awesome. Nice yeah. So, well, cheers. So shout out to Kansas City and good beer. And I know that Friday now it's definitely getting to weekend and happy hour. So good timing for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I'm having is I'm having my coffee, but I've got the Brøndby cup here because that's my soccer team in Denmark, and against all odds right now we've won the first 4 games, so we're actually number 1 in the league despite not having the funds currently. So
that's amazing, man.
Yep, had to watch a game this morning.
So what Danes are in the Premier League?
So we used to have.
Camera's out of focus. I'm gonna get it fixed.
Sure.
Keep going.
Yeah, we can talk at the same time. So Christian Eriksen used to play at Tottenham. He's now an intern. That's not going too well. We have Kasper Schmeichel at Leicester. He's the goalkeeper at Leicester. He won a couple of years ago against all odds. They won the championship. I don't know if you remember that, Leicester in the Premier League.
Yeah, I do remember that actually.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
His father was Peter Schmeichel. Peter Schmeichel came from my club, and he won, I think, several championships, the Liga Cup, and also Champions League a couple of times back when he was a goalkeeper.
Right on.
So, what sport are you following? Is that Kansas City football or? Yeah,
the Chiefs are good. I'm not the biggest NFL fan, but I do like to watch those big ones that come on. My 2 favorite sports to watch, though, are basketball and soccer / football, European football. Cool, the real football.
Exactly. Like, I always wondered why you guys call American football for football, because the ball spends most of its time in the hand of someone, so you could call it handball.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's the opposite. It's the opposite of soccer, because in soccer you have the goalie is the only person who can touch the ball. In football, basically the only person who kicks the ball ever is the kicker. So there's like one person on each squad, and it's completely misnamed. So it should be like, I don't know, handball. I guess there already is a handball. But yeah, American football should not be called football at all. That's ridiculous. Right. In fact, I think it's like an attack on actual football to call it that.
Kind of, yeah.
What's up, BTC Moon Guy? He's following me around today.
So I think BTC Moon Guy, shout out to you. He's coming on every single show that I'm doing here, and it's pretty well done, because I'm only like sending out the link as we go live. It's not been pre-programmed. I'm more roll with the punches.
I did tip him off earlier. I did tip him off earlier today.
Perfect.
Because he was hanging out with us. We're doing a thing on Swan now called Swan Lounge. We are hanging out on Fridays. So I was on with Meister, and then Swan Lounge with Brecky and Reed and Andy Edstrom, and now hanging out with you. So it's been a fun day.
Oh, awesome. So is that on you guys sending that on YouTube or?
Yep, YouTube and Twitter, just like we do with the Swan Signal show. So it's going to be every Friday, just a hangout vibe. Swan Signal is pretty, serious, and we get into some deep stuff, and you got some heavy hitters on that show. So it's fun to have like a hangout, just shoot the shit and be with your buddies, kind of thing. So like this. I appreciate
exactly.
This. And now it is appropriate hour that I can have a beer, so that's even better.
Absolutely. So
Cheers.
it was kind of so. I started my Bitcoin meetup back in 2017, and I also started producing videos on YouTube. But then I was really busy last year, like it was impossible for me to do anything. And then so I restarted this year, like a month ago or something, producing videos. And then I think lately I've been doing several videos with Pop Lord, as you know, where it's really just so we've been talking Bitcoin on the phone like on a weekly basis for talking on the phone for 1.5 hours, discussing everything Bitcoin and macroeconomics and what's going on. And I kept saying to him, and he agreed that, listen, we should put these discussions on YouTube because maybe someone else also find some of the discussions we have useful. So. But Brady, so the big topic this week, Bitmex, was it yesterday or the day before, got charged by U.S. authorities. What's your take on that? Can you explain why do you think that they have been charged and what's going on?
Well, I mean, this has been a long time coming. The CFTC has been building a case for a long time. Okay, real quick. BTC Moon Guy, are you a Jayhawk fan? Let me know in the chat. That's awesome if you are. We can talk about that. Yeah, so I mean, this has been coming for a long time. The CFTC has been building a case for quite a while. Bitmex was founded in 2014. It's been running for 6 years now. I'm pretty sure that Arthur was assuming it, and the other guys running the show there was assuming it would happen sooner than this. They are well prepared for this. I'm sure they're multinational, multi-sig, multi-jurisdiction, multi-sig setup is going to be tested now. We'll see what happens, but it'll be fun to see if the government can get any of this Bitcoin, because if they can't, then it's bullish. It shows that Bitcoin is actually a non-sovereign store of wealth, store of value, and censorship resistant. If you even against the American empire, the massive, powerful American government across borders. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that's the most fascinating aspect of this to me, and so that'll be fun to watch. So yeah, it's not like a surprise. It was coming at some points. They are, pushing back, saying that the allegations are unfounded and that they will be fighting them, voraciously in the courts. One of the guys has been arrested in Massachusetts. The other, Arthur, and the other guy are still at large outside of the United States. So yeah, it's an interesting situation. It'll be fun to watch it out over years. Again, it's been happening going to continue on for years. This is just just another start of another chapter in this whole fight.
Right. But what's the reason they've gone after Bitmex? What's the allegations? Is it because they're running non-KYC? Is it because US customers have lost money? What's the specific charge here?
Yeah, it's anti-money laundering laws, KYC laws. Basically like operating an unregistered derivatives exchange, all kinds of CFTC and FinCEN regulation violations. And yeah, I mean, we'll see what the lawyers, like I said, they've been preparing for this for a very long time, and the lawyers will have their day in courts. I'll definitely be following the litigation as it goes along. The potential fines are enormous. There's jail time associated with these charges, potentially. So yeah, it's not anything to sneeze at. They're going to have a big fight on their hands, and the consequences are large. But this is a battle that was going to happen in some way, shape, or form, whether it was Bitmex or some other similar exchange. Bitcoin allows for this kind of a derivative exchange to happen, to exist. And so again, this will be another test of the network and of the ethos of the system to see if it can survive a pushback from a state. And it brings up an interesting discussion, right? Because I think it's important to have both kind of sides of this developing at the same time. I think it's important to have regulated Bitcoin businesses in the system that follow, obviously, following the laws to the letter, getting all the regulations, et cetera. That's very important. Obviously, we need to have that if we want Bitcoin to be a serious player in terms of money and financial system. But I think it's also important to have the development of a system outside of the realm of government in a completely free market way, and A/B test these things, because we've been living in this system where we really only have kind of one way to go about it, right? And it would be interesting to see how this sort of parallel system can, survive or thrive alongside this system, the Bitcoin network that's being KYC'd and regulated, et cetera. So it's a fascinating experiment. Like in development and software, you do A/B testing to kind of see, compare outcomes. And this is like a real world, high stakes A/B test that we're seeing with our money.
Right, absolutely. I mean, the amount of funds Bitmex has are huge. I believe they have slightly more than 1% of all current Bitcoin outstanding at all. So as far as I understand, the multi-sig that they have, for those who don't know what a multi-sig is, it basically means if you have like 4 signatures for a transaction, if it's a 3 out of 4 multi-sig, then 3 of the owners of the keys need to sign it for a transaction to occur. And as I understand or read yesterday, their multi-sig is a 3 out of 4 to be able to move funds from their cold storage and send it back to clients, basically. But I read that 2 out of the 4 in charge have been held in custody. Have you heard anything about that? I know yesterday a lot of people were talking about whether Bitmex would be able to do their transactions today. People who are withdrawing, etc. Have you heard anything?
Here's a story that was just posted actually about 15 minutes ago. Nearly 40,000 Bitcoin have been pulled from Bitmex and CFTC allegations. That's a lot of Bitcoin. So obviously people are getting their Bitcoin off the exchange, which is great. And Bitmex is still processing those withdrawals, which is also good. So that's, they had 192,000 Bitcoin before, I believe. And that is 13%. 13% of all the BCC in their vaults was withdrawn in a single hour.
So if it's working, it's working, and then people don't have to be too afraid. What do you think this will mean for other exchanges and platforms out there? Will it be going after the ones not doing KYC? Because KYC is the thing that I guess non-KYC allows for what the money laundering charges. Although constantly it's been banks every single year, several banks get huge fines for money laundering, and no one goes to jail.
Right.
But they're paying their dues to the government. So I don't know if that's why they always get away with it. But money laundering that people keep blaming Bitcoin for, the biggest cases of that are happening in the registered banks. But what do you think about other exchanges globally? Do you think that authorities will go after others if they don't do KYC, or is it everyone they want to go after?
Yeah, well, the way that these things usually work is that there are a couple of example cases that are made, right? And the idea is because it takes a lot of work to bring charges like this. Like I said, it's been a couple of years in the making. And it'll take a lot of work to, prosecute and defend those charges moving forward. So the bandwidth that the CFTC has they're basically being DDoS'd by all these exchanges all over the world, right? They just don't have the bandwidth to prosecute everything. So the way they have to approach it is pick a case or two and prosecute that and make that set that as an example. And hopefully that will, dissuade future businesses and entrepreneurs from doing the same thing. To me, it's kind of a fool's errand at this point for them. I think that they will certainly have an outcome in this particular case. There will be some charges that land. I don't doubt that. The extent of which, it'll be somewhere in the middle between like what's being alleged now and where the final outcome is. But yeah, I mean, this just invites more exchanges to come out and do this to kind of fill the gap. And I mean, it's obviously a lucrative business to operate a shitcoin casino and massive leverage on Bitcoin. People want to gamble, right? So this is going to continue. And Bitmex has put itself out there for a long time and really rubbed it in the face, of the CFTC and the regulators. We were talking earlier on Meister and on the Hangout, like the example of Arthur Hayes bringing 3 Lambos to New York for the Consensus conference in 2017, parking them outside the main entrance of the conference, right?
Right.
And I mean, that kind of show, right? And that got mainstream attention. Those pictures were everywhere for a few weeks at the height of the madness, just as an example or like a metaphor for the craziness that Bitcoin was. Lambos, was a big meme back then, right? And yeah, he's got that coconut line that was actually cited in the press release from the CFTC. We're moving to this location because all it takes is a coconut to bribe the local officials in this jurisdiction. Obviously insinuating that all of the CFTC is corrupt, right? So,
but just going to cost more money, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's maybe this was going to happen to one of these exchanges, and it seems like Arthur Hayes wanted it to happen to BitMEX. If they survive this, then they cement themselves as one of the global Bitcoin exchanges, like that will be around for a very long time, and they will be getting a ton of media. No doubt about that, right? So, maybe it's good for BitMEX, and maybe it's a calculated move.
Wow, that would be interesting if that's the case. But there's no doubt that there's probably no one except a very few that has as much money to fight in court than BitMEX. I mean, they have been making a ton of money running BitMEX. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how they'll be able to defend. If they don't have to go to jail like bankers that money launder, or if they will be sent to jail. It'll be interesting to see. By the way, for those that don't know, Brady is running, I would say, the most underrated Bitcoin YouTube channel, Swan Bitcoin. I have the link below in the YouTube description. They have, Brady you have some amazing names on that YouTube channel. I really enjoy those shows and recommend everyone to go check it out. Subscribe. The link is below. There's some awesome shows. So you've been doing podcasts and YouTube videos about Bitcoin for like in your own capacity for how long have you been producing content?
Started in January 2018. So it's been 2.5 years, a little over 2.5 years.
Right.
Yeah. So Citizen Bitcoin podcast, citizenbitcoin.world. It started in January 2018. All of that year, it was just me and my buddy Tommy posting every couple of weeks. And it was just the two of us sitting down talking like we are right now about Bitcoin. We were doing it every, most days anyway. And so we decided to just kind of like round up some of the stuff we were talking about and put it into a podcast every couple of weeks, mostly as a way just to kind of force us to learn, to know a little bit better what we were talking about. And then I started interviewing Bitcoiners, moved to publishing every week, and that got me on the radar, Corey's radar, Corey Clipston, the founder CEO of Swan. And I got brought onto the team, the early team at Swan, employee number 1, and started Swan Signal. So now I've got those 2 shows going, and Swan Signal's been a ton of fun, man. Like pairing up these big names and having discussions. Kind of the real work for it is, I put some prep into it, obviously, to work out an outline and some questions and stuff. But the fun part of it is making the pairings, getting the people together. It's a lot of fun to, you get Danielle DiMartino Booth, who's really well-known macro analyst. She worked in the Dallas Fed for a long time. She was became the right-hand analyst of the president of the Dallas Fed. And then she, when he was in 2008, was at the table when decisions were being made at the Federal Reserve about how to handle the crisis. And the president of the Dallas Fed, who she worked for, was the only president of a Federal Reserve Bank in the United States. There's, I think, 13 regional banks that dissented against the quantitative easing plan, which is really interesting. And so she then left the Fed, started her own analysis company called Quintelligence. And she wrote a book called Fed Up. And it's a fantastic read. It's so well written. It's really good. She was a journalist by trade before she came to the Fed. So she's not as well known among Bitcoiners. She's did a podcast with Bitcoin Magazine called FedWatch, and that was really good. She's been on a couple other Bitcoin podcasts a while ago, but she hasn't really made the rounds yet. And so I'm really excited to get her on with Michael Saylor. That's going to be October 13th. So we're going to have Giga Chad himself and then Danielle DiMartino Booth. So I think it's going to be a really great introduction to most Bitcoiners of Danielle, and I hope that Bitcoiners start reading her book. So we'll do an hour with Danielle and Michael, and then we have Michael for half an hour one-on-one after that. So that's going to be a fire episode for sure.
Totally. Count me in. I'll be there for sure watching that. Awesome. And so as you mentioned, or as we spoke about, you're running this Swan Signal, and also, I've had full disclaimer. I've done some work for Swan Bitcoin, and so for everyone out there, I have also been doing some work with Brady, and I can just say Brady is an absolute MVP at Swan.
Likewise.
Thanks. No, he's totally on top of all the education and project management of marketing and everything. Very impressed, man. You're doing a great job over there. So just to touch a little bit upon Swan, explain to the people that don't know what Swan does, please. And also, in the meantime, I will throw up your link on the screen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we are pretty noisy, so I'm guessing that, or at least hoping that whoever's listening or watching has heard of Swan, swanbitcoin.com. We are the best way to accumulate Bitcoin. We are laser focused on stacking sats regularly over time. Time in the market beats timing the market. So you don't want to sit and watch all of these price charts all the time, try to catch the dips on your own, et cetera, et cetera. It's 24/7, 365 market. It'll drive you crazy. 99% of people shouldn't be trying to do that in any case, especially in a market like this one. So we built this way to very, very simply and easily automatically stack sats. You connect your bank account, you set the frequency that you want to stack and the amount. We'll take that fiat from your bank account, turn it into Bitcoin, and you can also set up automatic withdrawals. So it's the automatic withdrawals, you get an email in your inbox and you have to approve, and that's for security reasons. But the automatic withdrawal just means a one-click withdrawal, basically, in your email inbox. So you don't have to go into the app or anything. You just confirm your withdrawal. You can set a threshold. So I have a threshold of 0.025 Bitcoin. So anytime my Swan account gets to 0.025 Bitcoin, then it automatically initiates a withdrawal. I get an email, I click the button, boom, it's into my cold storage. So yeah, it's awesome setup. Really proud of the team. We have an amazing team. Jan Pritzker, the author of Inventing Bitcoin, is a co-founder, CTO. Corey Clipston is a founder, CEO. He's an amazing leader and does great work. And then we just brought on Gigi, who a lot of people will know. He wrote 21 Lessons. And is epic shitposter on Twitter. We have Brandon Quittem, the author of Mycelium series. We have Brecky Von Bitcoin, Neem Master. He's our creative director. Reed Womack, who's kind of come from kind of out of nowhere relatively, and is an absolute baller. He runs the sports show and does a bunch of other stuff for us. We have an amazing guy who's a Bitcoiner as well. Basically, you have to be a Bitcoiner to be on the team.
Yeah.
Bitcoin first. Yeah.
Yeah, it's honestly quite the dream team. And I mean, I've also seen that on Twitter. I think all of us has that. A lot of people saying, how do you get all these Bitcoiners to work on Swan? But yeah, it's amazing guys, really heavy hitters, both when it comes to Bitcoin, but also in the work they do. I mean, I've seen it myself. And by the way, for anyone that wants to start dollar cost averaging through Swan, that has the lowest fees for regular fixed purchase, so you don't have to worry about buying it when it's cheap, because you don't know when it's cheap, just buying it on a regular basis, which really has proven to be a great way of acquiring Bitcoin in a way that is without any stress. If you're using the link on the screen, swanbitcoin.com/Brady, then you will get $10 of Bitcoin thrown into the account when you're setting up. So that's a little shill for you, Brady.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Yeah. So that's Swan Force. And you can join Swan Force from anywhere in the world. It's our referral program. You get 25% of the fees that your referrals, the fees on the Bitcoin purchases your referrals make, 25% for 3 years. So you can really stack some meaningful sats. You sign up, 10 or 20 people in your circle of friends, and you'll be stacking some Bitcoin for the next 3 years that can actually add up pretty quickly. And they get $10 a Bitcoin. So yeah, that's called the Swan Force.
Awesome. So Brady, we had the halving, and I think no one disagrees that the halving happened, which happened the 11th of May this year. It does have a positive impact on the price of Bitcoin, because the fresh supply, as I say, has been cut in half. And historically, that has always given some major bull runs. Yet people need to understand, it does take time for this lack of supply to kick over in the price. Like first you see it takes some time to edge back to the all-time high from last time, which was 20,000. Right now we're at 10,500 because as long as we're below that all-time high, there's still a lot of doubt and, years ago it was higher, Bitcoin's going nowhere. Once we cross that, and last time that took about half a year to cross the all-time high of 1,100, and then things just start to accelerate. But what's your expectations to the bull run that we're seeing the beginning of right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, there has definitely been a correlation so far between in the stock to flow ratio and price. That might continue. I mean, the main driver is, especially when these halvings are getting to be like lower numbers of Bitcoin compared to the stock, the amount of the supply shock becomes less and less, right? And the price becomes more increasingly a function of demand with every halving epic, because the supply shock is lower. And I think that'll be the case this time. I think the supply shock will have less to do with the price rally in this run than it did last time, and less still than the time before that. And then, the next halving will have, the supply shock will play less of a role. Obviously, price is a function of supply and demand, and to get price to go up, you got to have more buyers than sellers. That's all it comes down to. You can throw every model in the book at you, draw every line you want, wedge, triangles, resistance, support, et cetera, but and that's fun to do, but it just comes down to supply and demand. So I think
absolutely always supply and demand.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah. So what I think happens though in these rallies is, you bottom out and you have a typical market cycle. I just think that they're happening faster in Bitcoin than they do in other cycles because we're bootstrapping. And I think the supply shocks definitely played a role, especially in the first and second halving. This one I think is going to be more demand driven, and number go up obviously makes a difference. So once all-time high is broken, and we will get there at some point, but once that is broken, you're going to get into a serious feedback loop of demand and attention. So it's going to be like attention brings in new demand,
Right.
price goes up, et cetera, et cetera. So that feedback loop that happens with every cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How far do you think we can go? How far do you think we can go? I mean, it's anyone's guess, really. But what's your like? I mean, we're holding for the long term, so it doesn't really matter. But I mean, if you have any hopium dreams or numbers, it's always fun to discuss.
Yeah, man. God, I think we can go pretty high. I think it can go really high. When I look at, so I try to look at fundamentals, like what things that are happening, right? And kind of stay away from the price charts. So when I see the economic backdrop that we're in right now, the macro environment, where we have the inevitable result of 50 years of fiat money, looking like we're coming to like the end now, the inevitable end, which is massive inflation, massive money printing, right? And that's a great, Jonas, that's exactly right. Bitcoin has no top because fiat has no bottom.
Exactly.
And that's the point. That's the point. So we're in that economic backdrop, the macroeconomic backdrop, and the global reserve currency is being inflated. That's the only response that they have at this point to try to manage the economy, because the debt is piled up so high that you either let it all collapse into one great shitstorm that has been basically created by kicking the can down the road for 50 years, or you print more money. Obviously, you're going to print more money. That's the choice they've been making. That's the choice they'll continue to make. There's no other choice at this point. So you have that reality, and then you have the reality of massive investors, very well-respected investors who have the attention of all the other investors that are following, their lead because they've been very successful, like Paul Tudor Jones, Raoul Pal, Lynn Alden, Preston Pish. These guys have influence, and they are all in on Bitcoin. They are super bullish on Bitcoin. And Dan Tapiero is another one, big macro investor, gold guy. He's super bullish.
Who is it George Gammon that says he's no? It's there was one guy who says he's irresponsibly long. I don't remember
that's
the name.
Raoul.
That's Raoul. Yeah, Raoul Powell.
That's Raoul. He's irresponsibly long. He said on Swan Signal that he is 75% of his liquid investments switched over to Bitcoin.
Right.
That's huge. It's massive.
It's massive. And MicroStrategy with Michael Saylor, who is therefore also the super chat, went all in and converted all of it, all of their fiat cash on the balance sheet of this company, a public listed company, to Bitcoin simply to safeguard value. And to be honest, when I think about it, Bitcoin to me is no longer really a matter of here's a speculation, to gain value. It's really becoming to me almost dangerous. All other assets compared to Bitcoin, because I believe that Bitcoin will replace fiat currency. And when it does, you no longer has this artificially cheap money with a 0% interest rate, which really is what is holding up all other assets. I mean, if your alternative is either getting 0% interest rate, or you invest in a company that has $100,000 in profit, it's still kind of worth infinity when you can't get any return on your cash. That's why I see normal assets collapsing when Bitcoin takes over, because that's what I believe will happen.
Well, there's so much debt built up it's built on an absolute mirage. It's just it's nothing there below. It's just a house of cards built on literally nothing below it. So once that starts falling, it just collapses completely. It's so over leveraged. The global economy is so over leveraged at this point that you just can't. There's not enough assets to pay off all the debt, obviously. So more and more you hear well-respected analysts talking about the increasing possibility of a debt jubilee. And honestly, unless there are some sane people who come to power, at the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government, then I don't see another outcome. If it's they're just going to keep chasing it until eventually hyperinflation, debt jubilee situation. So buy Bitcoin, because that's like the chance. The way Raoul Pal puts is the fat tail risk of a potential bad outcome is completely unacceptable right now. So that's why you absolutely need to have Bitcoin as part of your portfolio, if not overweighted largely toward it. Plus it's still a tiny asset. It's $200 billion, and these players are coming in and talking about it, right? Like, Michael Saylor bought 0.1% of the whole supply. With his first buy added to it.
Yeah.
So
now it has almost 0.2% of all total Bitcoin outstanding.
You have BlackRock, Vanguard, and the Norwegian Pension Fund are, besides Michael Saylor, three of the largest shareholders in MicroStrategy. Okay.
Right.
So they, obviously Bitcoin was on their radar before, but they now have Bitcoin exposure officially. If they didn't already, right. I'm sure they probably do. But this has the attention of the entire U.S. corporate, community, you could call it, or whatever. And it's
Michael Saylor did that.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal, man. And the way the how deeply he understands it is really remarkable.
Absolutely.
It's bullish as fuck, man.
Absolutely.
We're going high. It's going to go high. I think, like, you want to talk about the stock to flow model. If the stock to, I mean,
no, we don't have to.
That could hold. No, I'm just saying, like, people love it, right? I think it breaks at some point, but I think it breaks the upside. I think it's too conservative.
Agreed.
Because we're going to reach some escape velocity, and then it's an insane feedback loop.
Absolutely. As I mean, my own expectations, and this is, as much built on history and the kind of upswing and factor that the Bitcoin price grows with, is that Bitcoin will reach at least 100,000, if not more, in this bull run. I don't think we'll see big sellers coming in the market until that. And I mean, all the right things are in place now to go full hyper Bitcoinization. But I still think that, like we've seen previously, we'll see some of these people that were in Bitcoin a long time and got a lot of Bitcoin early on, that once the price hits, say, 200,000 or more, they will have such a big proportion of Bitcoin or of their wealth in Bitcoin that I think we'll see, like previously at 20,000, that there will be some Bitcoin for sale because they want to either pay off their mortgage or buy a house or buy an island if they were early on. And I think, although we are on the way to that hyper Bitcoinization and infinity, really, as the fiat just has no bottom, as Jonas says, I think we'll see one more cycle, and then my expectations is 2026 is just that will be the like that bull run that goes so steep and it just won't have an end. That's my take on it.
Before this year happened, before the economic shutdowns and everything, I was definitely in that camp, but I think that future may have been pulled forward. And I think that this could be really, really shocking to the upside. Like, I mean, think about it. You get those companies piling in with a tiny percent of their money, and they realize that asset inflation is actually hitting 15, 20%. That's not being realized yet. Michael Saylor's seeing that, and there are some people who are seeing it, but he's ahead of the curve right now, like far ahead.
Right.
And when that reality sets in, like, it's going to be Bitcoin will be the flight to safety at that point, because the dollar is crumbling and all of the assets that they're buying to, as an inflation hedge, are actually inflating away even faster. That's a shocking, turn of events. Bonds aren't safe. Treasuries aren't safe anymore.
Because their claim on fiat currency that everyone can see is losing value because it's just being printed so fast.
So you go to there's gold and there's Bitcoin.
Right.
And like Paul Tudor Jones says, Bitcoin's the faster horse because it's smaller and better, so much better in so many ways.
It just has advantages that gold doesn't have. And the people that still think that gold has value because people wear it as jewelry, I think are misunderstanding it, because it's more about people wear it as jewelry because it has value. And Bitcoin, in my mind, no doubt is being replaced. Gold is being replaced by Bitcoin in this turnaround. So one thing I want to just mention also is Ray Dalio, the founder of the largest hedge fund in the world, it came out this year after they started really diluting fiat currency by printing a lot and saying that that cash is trash. And even Warren Buffett started buying. He always hated on gold because it doesn't create a positive cash flow, but he started buying gold stocks. So even amongst these conservative people in the investment community are starting to be open for Bitcoin. And I would say the companies you mentioned that investors in MicroStrategy, I mean, it may be that Michael Saylor has the majority vote and can make it happen, but at least they've had this conversation, and he told all these investors you mentioned why this is the right thing to do and why he's doing it. So it's a very high level person now talking to some of the biggest investors in the world and telling them, look, we're going to do this. These are the reasons, and consider it yourself. So whether this will happen or not, I mean, to me, it's a very interesting discussion whether if we'll see a bear market again or not. As I said, I think we will see it. But I would say if one of the FANG companies does a MicroStrategy and converts their cash to Bitcoin, it may be game over for fiat. I mean, Apple, what do they have? 200 billion US dollars?
Even 1%, because all that really matters is the signal, right?
Right.
If you get an Apple saying we're gonna put 1% into Bitcoin of our treasury, I mean, that's it. Like, then it's a race. Okay, you're going to do 1, we're going to do 2. Okay, we're going to do 4. We're going to do, and in the long run, if the things play out like the writing on the wall says they will, then these companies who get in on Bitcoin first are going to be the new global corporations. Like MicroStrategy, took itself from a relatively obscure public company in the United States with this move to
I never heard about it.
Perhaps one of the most influential corporations in the 21st century. Period. Right? Yeah. Maybe. I
think it will. I think you're right. I think it'll happen.
What a move.
So regarding whether Apple or Amazon or these others, if they put, or Google for that matter, or Facebook, they all have a lot of cash. Whether they'll put in 1% or more, I think probably just like with MicroStrategy, once they sit down and look at what Bitcoin is, you don't want to just have 1% exposed. You start to realize that Bitcoin has already won as money, like Michael Saylor said. And the upside here, as BTC Moon Guy is holding me up to, because I mentioned this before, is Bitcoin becoming global money, and also starting to act as store of value and taking market share from real estate and stocks, which today is the way that fiat currency can escape from dilution, is buying stocks and real estate. That's why they are going up despite the economy being contracting. So the way I see it, Bitcoin is headed for a $400 trillion market cap, which puts each Bitcoin at the equivalent of 20 million US dollars. And I think this will happen in this decade. So I'm fairly bullish there. It will be interesting to see what happens. But that creates, from the current price, that's a 2000x. And even if you want to disregard and look away from the last 10 and a half years or 11 and a half years of track record, if you want to ignore Bitcoin's performance, say that Tulip bubble didn't last long. This is not a bubble. This is an asset that has a reason. You don't grow for 11 and a half years without having a strong reason to actually be adopted by people. So it's upside is huge.
And you gotta obviously look at the potential downsides too. I mean, it's certainly not a guaranteed thing. We got to stay humble, like Matt Odell tells us, right? Always got to remind it, and it's important in this space because we can get super high on hopium and moon juice. Stay humble, educate other people, shield lightly, and remember that the moon may not come. It's possible. There are things that could happen. Although I think at this point it's inevitable, but the time frame is still questionable. All the fundamentals are lining up for it to be a massive run. The only thing that I think could really hamper things now is if it goes, if it becomes so popular, so useful, and we have corporations adopting it, et cetera, that the only thing could be some kind of coordinated state attack, right? But I don't see that. That's not the trend that I'm seeing. I'm seeing the trend increasingly being toward accepting Bitcoin as a reality, providing a legal framework for it to exist and integrate into the United States as a legal framework and regulatory framework, et cetera. I see politicians talking about Bitcoin. There's a woman who's running for Senate in Wyoming who was on Marty Bent's podcast, had a great conversation with him. She's gets it. I think it's her son-in-law is Will Cole from Unchained Capital. And, of course, Wyoming is very pro-Bitcoin already. So Will has brought his mother-in-law right up to speed, and she's running for Senate. So, of course, we have a couple other guys who are in Senate and the House who have already been talking about, Bitcoin is an unstoppable force, knowing the difference between Bitcoin and shitcoin. This stuff's on the congressional record, So I don't see that trend, coming. And so, yeah, I mean, I think in the sense of, if the feedback loop starts happening in terms of price and we're already trending toward legal acceptance, then that's the formula for escape velocity. Because the only thing I see that could hamper it is state attack. And so, yeah.
Right. So, and that is a common thing. A lot of people think about as a potential obstacle. I just spoke to a friend of mine that I haven't spoken to for years, but I called him. He's in Denmark. I tried to red pill him on Bitcoin, and unfortunately, I'm usually successful when I try to explain Bitcoin, but he's in the mindset of gold still. But he'll get there. And he also mentioned, what if states want to stop it? And I mentioned to him that I believe it was 2012 that CIA put down a commission or task force to, okay, we're going to stop Bitcoin because we don't like that money is being separated here from the state. We want to have the power of money. And they found out that, look, they can't do anything. Governments can't stop it. So, and back in 2017, I ran the numbers on the hashing rate on Bitcoin. And that was back then. We are way ahead now. And I noticed that even if governments hire Amazon, Google, Facebook, all these guys who have immense server parks around the world to start mining Bitcoin to attack the chain, they had nowhere near the hashing rate, and that was back then to attack Bitcoin. Like, it's game over. Bitcoin is safe.
We've reached mining escape velocity, I think. And Max Kaiser likes to talk about a global hash war. So, like, if all of this starts going down and you get that feedback loop, it's going to also affect the hash power, because everyone's going to want to protect their Bitcoin and have a say on the the network and all that stuff. So, yeah, and Jonas has a good point here in the chat that smaller states, and I would add corporations, are going to front run Bitcoin purchases. Yeah, normally tied to gold holdings. Yeah, so I mean, this is the most accessible, asymmetric bet in terms of monetary gains, but also in terms of power gains that's ever existed in the history of this this species, I guess you could say, right? You get some real estate on the blockchain, and you are planting a flag in a bright orange future, and there's going to be a massive race, a massive land grab, and you're right. It's gonna upend power structures, and I think you're also right, because it is accessible. That the federal governments and the massive corporations of the world will probably be latecomers, and they're going to get sats on the Bitcoin for their fiat, and that's going to be a big power shift as well.
Right.
So
yeah, I think if the central banks, and this is even if they act fast enough, because otherwise they'll be totally obsolete in my opinion, but if they act fast enough, I think they'll be reduced to nation state cold storage, because they won't be printing fiat currency anymore. Nobody will want it, in my opinion. So their best chance is to be, the Fed to become a U.S. government cold storage facility. That's what I see as the best option for them, for their future by the end of this decade.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they could try 6102 style. Basically, you got to give us your Bitcoin. We know, this is so. 6102 Bitcoin. I think it's at 6102 Bitcoin on Twitter. Yeah, I'll have to look it up later. But yeah, he's publishes some amazing stuff. He runs bitcoin-only.com, and super smart guy. I don't know their gender. It's a super smart person, and they talk about this 6102 order that could happen. That's why they're using that pseudonym.
Is this the order that was that the number of the order back in 33 when the U.S. government confiscated all gold from the citizens? Yep. Actually, so it's one of the things I bring up once a while, and I try to sort of convey to people is default on your debt means you have an obligation to give someone value and you run away from it. And people who say that U.S. cannot default on its debt forget that in 1933, it was actually a national default. U.S. government defaulted on the gold they owed to citizens, and they said, hey, we printed some paper, use that instead. That is a default of debt. In 1971, when we won the Bretton Woods, U.S. defaulted temporarily, as Nixon said, although it's still in power, defaulted internationally on the rest of the world. So this has happened every 40, 50 years. Don't say it can't happen. It already did.
Yeah. All right. So Jonas is saying that it can't happen on Bitcoin, right? Here's the worry. Okay. So I wouldn't be so confident. And that's one of the things that we need to stay humble about. There's a lot of Bitcoin on exchanges. There's a lot of KYC'd Bitcoin. So an order could come down saying like, okay, you claimed X number of Bitcoin on your taxes. You have not reported selling it and paying income taxes or capital gains taxes on it. So therefore, we assume you have the Bitcoin. So give it to us, or or prove that it was lost, right? And they could make the order so that you. And look, it could get hairy. You have to remember that this is the main source of state power, right? The power to print the money. This is how you build massive militaries. This is how you build massive, infrastructure programs, all kinds of stuff. Like you curry favor with the populace and, build military might around the world with the money printer. So they're not going to give that up easily. There are tricks there are things that they could do, right? And Bitcoin is, yes, it is non-sovereign. Yes, it is much more censorship resistant than gold. It's decentralized far more than gold. But there are points that we need to be thinking about, and not. I don't think it's good to just assume that can't happen. So at 6102 Bitcoin on Twitter, worth a follow, and just really kind of sober look at that kind of possibility. And I think it's absolutely something that you need to be aware of.
You're right. So if you after this show, Brady sends me the Twitter account of this guy or girl, I'll put it in the show notes as well. So that is one of the things, to be honest, I like about Swan Bitcoin, because it's the only exchange, KYC exchange, that is recommending automatic withdrawal of your Bitcoin. So you take possession, and then you can kind of do with it, what you want. But it will be a lot harder though for government to take it from you. It could be lost. Anything else macroeconomic, anything else going on in your part of the Bitcoin world, Brady, that you want to talk about?
I don't know, man. This is a good discussion. I can't think of anything now. I got to talk about Bitcoin for like 3.5 hours today, which makes it a really, really good day. So
it is, man. Yeah, it's been a really great discussion. I love hearing all your points. I mean, you're really on fire, but I knew that. I know you a little bit, so I knew this was going to be really good. And I hope I can convince you to come back another time. It's really been productive, and I think a lot of great points that you got across that I'm glad that people hear. We can spread the words and the word and the arguments for why Bitcoin is better. One thing also I like from Michael Saylor is, as he said, look, there's never been a technological network, because network effect is so important, means it's spread out to many people. There's never been a technological network that had reached $100 billion worth of value that didn't win out and didn't become the dominating force. And Bitcoin is way past the 100 billion. We're at 200 billion now, I believe, in market cap. And the number two is just so far away. So when it comes to being money of the world, it seems we have a clear winner. And as Gresham law states, which I believe in, if you have two money, the stronger one will win out in society. And you can make whatever fancy altcoin you want, but you will never get the hash rate, the security that Bitcoin has. So it's just the safer bet, in my opinion. The winner has found. I think we agree on that.
By orders of magnitude, man. By
orders of magnitude. Absolutely.
Like, absolutely clear, yeah.
We're so lucky to be alive and witness history. I mean, the last time this happened, that one money took over from another, was 3,000 years ago. Where gold came in and started. It was first circulated as gold coins in 700 BC in Lydia, which is an old kingdom position in what today is Western Turkey. And this, 3,000 years later, we see a new money, because fiat currency wasn't money. What we've had for the last a bit more than 100 years, it's money can store value. If you look up money in the dictionary, you can see that it stores value. As part of the definition, fiat currency has an official policy against storing value. Awesome. But Brady, thank you so much for coming on. One question: are you going to be at Bitcoin 2021 next year? I think it's 30th of April, 1st of May next year in Los Angeles, the conference.
That is the plan, man. We have big plans with Swan. So we're going to have a big presence there. We're going to do lots of cool stuff, events, and we're, I don't want to reveal too much yet, but I mean, we're going to have a big presence there. I'll just put it that way. So there's going to be a lot of fun. I love Bitcoin conferences. I think they're fantastic. Terrible for OPSEC, but if you're already out, then come and hang out, because being around Bitcoiners is it's a great feeling. I met in Bitcoin 2019 was my first big conference I went to, and I had not met anybody in person yet, and I met so many people there, and all of the the podcasters I was listening to, and the authors and content creators in general that I met. Also cool, super smart, great conversations, day and night, on the stage, off the stage, in the pubs and the parties. So good. So go to Bitcoin 2021 if you can. It's going to be a great time.
Yeah, and I will be there, so I'm looking forward very much to having fun and hanging out, Brady. So any final words, anything you want to mention, anything you want to plug before we end the show?
Go to youtube.com/swansignal and subscribe and turn on notifications. We've got Breedlove and Parker Lewis, Robert Breedlove, Parker Lewis next week. That's going to be fantastic. I think two of, if not my very favorite, two Bitcoin authors together. That's going to be super fun. And then, like I said, DiMartino Booth and Saylor the following week. And then we've got Jeff Deist, who's the president of Mises Institute, and Stefan Livera. So we're going to have an Austrian economics fest that's going to be a fun one too. I haven't announced that one yet, but that one just got wrapped up today, so that'll be going out up on the YouTube for schedule. Tomorrow, probably Monday or so.
Right. And yeah, that's. I can only say I'm extremely impressed by that channel that you have put together there as the host, and recommend people to go and subscribe. I mean, the amount. I mean, the type of people you have in is mind blowing. You had Adam back in, one of the really original people that did some of the technological work that was necessary for Bitcoin even to exist. I mean, that's just mind blowing. So I recommend going back, and that guy is just so smart. Great episode. Go back and watch it. All right. Thank you very much, Brady, for coming on. It was a real pleasure. Great points from your side. I just want to tell people to keep stacking sats, and also do not hold more value in fiat currency that you're willing to lose. All right. See you on the next one. Bye, guys. Bye.
See you, everyone. Thank you.